Michael D Ratner, congratulations on the film Justin Bieber, Our World. A very, very good, very excellent, technically impressive concert film. Congratulations also for Seasons, the documentary series you made for YouTube on Justin Bieber, and also for the Demi Lovato documentary. And I do hope to just briefly touch on those just in a few moments' time. So,
Love it.
congratulations on those
Thank
films as well. Can we just start off by, can you just orientate us by just telling us the kind of filmmaker you are and a bit about OBB Productions, your production house? Just give us the skinny on all that.
First off, thank you. I appreciate that. Really enjoyed making all those projects. As a filmmaker, I think I put story above everything. And I am hyper aware of the times we're living and the technologies available to me as a filmmaker and to my company. And I think that I have taken pride in thinking about the way the audience will watch my content. And I am open to audio only, making audio projects. We have OBB Sound. I'm open to branded content. You know, you can get your funding from a network, a brand. I'm open to TV, film, digital, and that's why we use all media. And I think that the way audiences consume content is changing. It's sometimes on a screen this big, and that's fine. And it's sometimes a show that's 10 minutes versus 22 and a half, 30, an hour, hour and a half. So I try to find interesting stories and characters and then really be aware of how that content will be consumed and thinking about Gen Z and millennials and younger audiences and making stuff that not only they'll like, but their parents will like. And I've taken a lot of pride in thinking about all of those steps, not just making something and then saying, well, who knows how they're going to watch it. Back in the day, people went to theaters or you watched it on a TV eventually. I just think there's so many more options at our fingertips, and that's really exciting to me. So I think I just answered that as a twofer. That's a bit about OBB. We do things in all those areas. Sort of platform duration agnostic. It's comedy, it's music, it's sports, it's drama, it's animation, and we've really enjoyed making those couple tentpole projects that you just mentioned.
So, on the one hand, you are very much a 21st century filmmaker, up with the technology, aware of platforms and all that kind of tech speak that young people of your generation are absolutely au fait with. Yet at the same time, you are a classicist. For you, the priority is what the priority has always been: story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations again on Our World. It's a very, very good concert film made primarily, though not exclusively, for Justin Bieber fans. As a concert film, I'm very keen to know what disciplines you have to employ. What do you keep in? What do you keep out of a fan oriented film on this scale and of this size?
It's a great question. We used a lot of what we had only because there wasn't just tons and tons and tons of footage as I've had with previous projects, both with Justin and otherwise, because we were filming throughout COVID and it wasn't so easy just to roll. You really had to be methodical, and the spontaneity of filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, was a bit stunted because you had to get testing done and all these other things. So we really had to pick our moments. And as you saw, Justin also was a cinematographer here. he was filming himself and self-capturing and vlogging, which was great, and I think was partly what made the film feel so unique. It was that juxtaposition of the beautiful glossy 32 camera setup with drones and everything else on the night of, paired with lo-fi 4K Apple iPhone footage, and I think that was really interesting. So here I wanted the story to be as it was. There wasn't a heavy hand of the filmmaker. It was supposed to be very verite, and it was supposed to give you a real inside look at this unique moment in time where live events weren't really happening, and Justin, through his leadership, was pulling off this show, and you got to see him and his team that have been at this for decade plus, even decade plus, pull off this thing when many people were not working, and certainly touring wasn't happening. And I think it's a really interesting peeling back of the curtain as to how something like this is pulled off. And a lot of it, credit to Justin, is through his leadership.
Well, kudos to you and your crew for how visually impressive and textured the film is. There is some great editing in here. I love the cutting from the stage to the fans to the rehearsal. It's great stuff. Michael, just briefly, can you give us some idea of how much footage you were dealing with? Because you had cameras everywhere.
Yeah. We did. We had 32 cameras the night of. There were a couple drones up in the air. And, we had Rory Kramer, who's Justin's videographer, longtime videographer, hired a lot of his actual friends, people he trusts, because we had to keep the circle so small, right? And it was a very bizarre time where, it was a very family type feel. And we hired a couple other fantastic cinematographers who worked alongside Rory. There was Evan, there was Matt, and they were out there in the field grabbing these really dynamic shots. And then we had your more traditional, tech set up and where you'd normally see things on a plot. So it was the combination of all these angles that made it feel really unique and big. When you start pairing all of those shots together, and you have some on the balconies and you have some on the ground, and then you've got the more dynamic ones. We had a steady cam up on the stage. I mean, we really covered the hell out of this thing.
Give me some idea of the mountain of footage, the mountain of material you had. How many hours did you have to deal with?
It's a good question. It had to be hundreds of hours. I don't know the exact number, but we're talking hundreds of hours. We shot, just to give a little more context, I want to say it was probably 35 days straight, and we were filming, call it 12-hour days, but then you had all these other cameras rolling. So, you line that stuff up and you sort of see what's the best angle specifically for the songs. You also have to keep in mind, we ended up cutting, I want to say it was 6 songs from the actual set list to make room so that it wouldn't just be so long, but to make room for a lot of those pods of the doc follow type stuff. So yeah, it was a exorbitant amount of footage, hundreds of hours, I'd say.
Well, the film does provide a very good cross-section of the concert and staging a concert of that size in the age of COVID. I'm very keen to know, and this is a bit of a cynical question, because we're all cynics out here, Michael, as you know. When you see Justin Bieber as EP on the film, is he the de facto director with the power of veto over what you did, or did you have a free hand?
Yeah, no, it's a phenomenal question, and one that I've been asked before. We've worked our way up to such tremendous trust. And, having made seasons together, having made Next Chapter together, having done a visual album together, having directed Intentions, Justin and I will have a conversation where I feel like I really, truly understand his objective with a film like this. This film, we wanted to make something that showed the power of team and loyalty and facing adversity, right? Pulling off a show where nobody had ever done one before on the roof of the Hilton. So once I understood exactly what he was setting out to do and why he wanted to capture it, right? Ultimately, it's his decision if he wants a camera crew around him. He hands the keys over, the filmmaking keys, to me. And, the reason why it's fair and right that he's a producer is, we creatively are aligned, where we know the type of film we're making. But I think what makes the film work so well is if you have a willing participant and talent who's excited to partner with you and make something, they're going to buy in more. They're going to give you more access. They're going to want to be a part of it. So I think that there is a certain cynical outlook where people think, oh, it must be so subjective. And I'm sure there are examples of where that can go wrong if there's not that proper trust. I'm thrilled to say that, Justin is incredibly collaborative, and I think he allows me to do what I do really well.
Okay, so the answer is that you did have a free hand. He wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, because you had made seasons and you had covered all the dark stuff in his career, did that, in a sense, free you up when making this, that you didn't have to cover that stuff. Although some critics have faulted the film for not having any of that material, I think the counter would be, it's already been done. It doesn't need to be in this film. Was that the case?
Word for word what you just said. we felt like, we just did that, and we did it really well, and everybody really enjoyed that film, and I think it was applauded, and it was, so well received because we did it objectively, and we actually took it to a place where people were shocked that Justin was so vulnerable and so willing to speak about those things. That came out in February of 2020. I mean, we just did it. And the exciting part of this film is that it's a trip down memory lane. It's a show. It's supposed to feel celebratory and fun. It's supposed to max it out. We didn't set out to really talk about stuff that we had just talked about previously. The same way there's no concert footage in Seasons. It's just a different project.
Now, you're part now of Justin Bieber's inner circle. Now, in wanting to know what that's like, let me put something to you that I reckon you already know, that Justin Bieber is not normal. He can't be. He has lived his entire life famous. How has that manifested in your dealings with him or Michael D Ratner? Is that wrong? Or is it partly wrong? Is it true? Partly true? Or not true at all? That he is not normal? Because it's hard to believe that he is.
I, for one, have no idea what normal is. But no, I think Justin, I applaud him. He's lived a life unlike any other. So in that sense, I hear you. It would be hard to relate or understand the shoes he's walking in. What I'll say is that even from Seasons to our world, I'm incredibly impressed with his growth and commitment towards changing and evolving, and I think change is a great thing, and I'm really impressed with his ability to adapt and continuously grow up. And he's 28 years old now, and a key theme in this project is his leadership and coming of age. There's a big difference between being 13, 15, 18, 22, 25. He did it all in front of the world, and I think right now you're seeing a young man leading a team, and very impressed that there are a lot of the same people in his circle. He's really loyal, and I think the way that he's transitioning is very impressive.
I'm really keen to know, given Seasons and the Demi Lovato documentary, what impact the presence of a camera has on a person's willingness to open up. One would think that the opposite was the case, but in your experience, it's obvious that the camera is like an invitation to be open.
I think that when trust is earned, the camera acts as catharsis. I really do. And I think that there's this moment, I've said this before, there's this moment when the interviews turn to conversations. And when the interviews turn to conversations and a safe space is created, I have found that you actually, in my shoes, don't need to ask that many questions. You don't need to be good at your job. All the work at that point is done. It's the time that you spend with the subject off screen and leading up to those moments where you get what I think are revelatory moments that are really key, pivotal pieces of these docs. And I think that when, again, you have aligned incentives and everybody understands what you're ultimately looking to do, whether that's mental health awareness, whether that's clearing the air, taking back your truth, whatever it is, I think the camera can really be cathartic.
Michael D Ratner, you, sir, are messing with the forces of nature. You have messed with the traditional release model of film by putting those documentaries out on YouTube, available to everybody for free. You are messing with the primal forces of nature. What you gain?
I think eyeballs and accessibility. I think that if we all stuck to the way things once were, we wouldn't be adapting to the times. And I think that in order to be the modern day great storyteller filmmaker, you actually in fact shouldn't only make things for theaters or film or traditional releases. You'd be using like half, a quarter, 10% of what's at your fingertips. Nowadays, I am a firm believer in and staunch product of the DIY era. Go pick up, if you're a filmmaker, if you're a storyteller, go pick up your camera, go gather your friends together, put together the wardrobe based on what's in your closet and make something. And it doesn't need to look like the greatest thing ever, but one foot in front of the other to start creating. And that's been my approach. I think that there aren't only 5, 6, 7, 8 television stations. There isn't just radio. There isn't just theatrical releases anymore. So as a storyteller, use all of those options and create. And on those projects that you're referring to that were YouTube originals, I love the idea that we would be global and that we would be free, and that the messaging of mental health awareness and some of the other really positive deconstructions of the social media era, and the fact that perfect is not a thing. Forget about not attainable. It's not a thing. That the best thing we could possibly do is get as many young people and people in general to see that stuff. And I think that the numbers speak for themselves. If you look at the millions and millions and millions of people that got to see that, who knows what would have happened otherwise. So it was definitely effective.